I should like to add our thanks to the Polonsky Foundation for all their support of our work, and to you and CERL for organising this webinar. It's really interesting to see the other projects. It's great. Let me see if I can share my screen. So this is by way of a joint presentation between myself and Dr. Karin Zimmermann of Heidelberg University Library. We are the two partners on the Polonsky Foundation Greek Manuscripts project. So the planning of the project goes back to 2017. After we began our negotiations and our conversations between Cambridge and Heidelberg, we put together an application to the Polonsky Foundation for a collaborative digitization project. And the decision was taken to focus on Greek manuscripts. We both had extensive Greek manuscript collections, and this focus on Greek manuscripts fitted with our wider strategic objectives.
The project, which runs from 2018 to 2021, will conserve, catalogue and digitize all the medieval and early modern Greek manuscripts in Cambridge libraries, including the University Library, Fitzwilliam Museum, and 12 colleges. That are 444 manuscripts. Heidelberg will digitize and catalogue the Greek manuscripts of the Bibliotheca Palatina, now physically divided between the Vatican Library and Heidelberg University Library, 423 manuscripts. For Heidelberg, this is the final piece of the jigsaw as part of a big multi-year undertaking to digitize all the extant manuscripts of the Bibliotheca Palatina.
And by contrast, for Cambridge, this is the first digitization to bring together so many partners from across Cambridge, and hopefully the first of many. As many of you will know, the colleges in Cambridge are all fiercely independent institutions, and many of them have extensive collections of medieval manuscripts, which they are keen to share more widely and make accessible. "394 of the 423 extant Greek manuscripts from the Bibliotheca Palatina are part of the Vatican collections. They were transferred from Heidelberg to Rome in 1623 as war booty after the 30 Years' War, along with a considerable number of manuscripts in Latin, Hebrew, some other languages, and thousands of prints. Heidelberg University's cooperative work with the Vatican started in 2010 with the digitization of 133 Latin manuscripts for the Bibliotheca Laureshamensis, one of the earliest projects to attempt to virtually reunite a medieval library. Having built a good working relationship, we then continued the arrangement, digitizing the remaining about 1,870 Latin manuscripts of the Bibliotheca Palatina kept at the BAV. The Greek manuscripts were digitized by up to 10 student assistants from Heidelberg, Erasmus scholars, under the direction of a member of the Heidelberg Digitization Center in our own digitization studio based in a building of the BAV in the Via della Conciliazione in Rome. Here you see a picture. And we used our own equipment, grass book tables, cameras, and computers. The student staff changed respectively every other term. This element of the project has now been completed. The arrangements for digitization worked very well due to excellent communications and trust built up between the Vatican Library and Heidelberg University Library, and due to extensive planning and close collaboration between the Department of Special Collections at Heidelberg and the head of the digitization team at Rome. Heidelberg catalogers don't have physical access to the BAV collections, so they have to work remotely on the manuscripts with the help of the high-resolution digital images. Of course, that makes work more tricky as it is anyway. Only the 29 Greek manuscripts that are kept in Heidelberg can be catalogued from the books themselves. Recording of the material, paper or parchment, the dimensions and collation of the manuscripts was collected by the student staff working in Rome as part of the digitization process. They also digitized the watermarks of the paper manuscripts, and these have been published in the Heidelberg Picture and Media Database HeidIcon and can be viewed alongside the digital images of the manuscripts.
In Cambridge, we recruited 3 teams of dedicated project staff, 3 conservators, 2 photographers, and 3 cataloguers. All 3 teams have had the benefit of working closely with each other and learning from each other. For example, the catalogers and the conservators have collaborated on the descriptions of medieval and Alla Greca bindings on certain manuscripts. The project started with a conservation survey of all the manuscripts in order to plan what work was required. There was also a survey by the catalogers to identify any additional Greek manuscripts which the scoping project prior to the application had missed. Whereas Heidelberg had a very clear idea of what manuscripts they were going to digitize, because the Bibliotheca Palatina is a single collection, in Cambridge there were decisions to be made about whether a manuscript was Greek enough to be included in the project. For example, we have bilingual manuscripts such as Codex Bezae, which is in Latin and Greek. We have lexica, which might be written in Latin, but about Greek words. Should we include that? One of the most challenging ones is a palimpsest that we have, where the undertext is Greek, but the overtext is Arabic. We decided that was Greek enough to include in the project. And of course, the existing catalogues are not necessarily adequate even to find the Greek manuscripts in Cambridge. Most of them are over a century old. In the course of the project, I have had one of the college librarians phone me up and say, we found another one, a Greek manuscript that she didn't know she had, we didn't know existed, and it's now been conserved, digitized and catalogued and included in the project. There was also quite a bit of work to be done in the first phase of the project in setting up agreements with the colleges around the transfer of manuscripts to the university library for digitization and the hosting of their images. The project has also benefited enormously from the involvement of the library's project support office. I second what Martin says about the value of project management. We have a part-time dedicated project manager and project coordinator who have managed the administrative aspects of the project, including relationships between partners and between the project teams in Cambridge, as well as handling meetings, budgets, recruitment and reporting. So everything was proceeding very well. This is an ongoing project, and we were making good progress on all aspects of the project until March 2020. And I just want to echo again what Martin said. He said he'd never seen the flawless progression of a project plan. But I don't think any of us had quite seen the derailing of a project plan to such an extent as the impact of the coronavirus pandemic. It has been a considerable challenge to keep the project running over the past few months. Here are a couple of photos of our library and some of the adjustments that have been made to the fabric of the library in the pandemic. Our most important consideration has been staff well-being. In Cambridge especially, we have a very international team. There are 5 nationalities represented amongst the 8 project members. Many of those staff members moved to Cambridge to work on the project, and as the manager of the project, I was very conscious of supporting people who were far from their families at such a difficult time. We kept up regular online social meetings, including for staff who were placed on furlough. Obviously, our photographers and our conservators were unable to work hands-on on the manuscripts while the library was closed.
We've all had to adapt to a lot more online meetings. So look where we are now. There have been some advantages in this. There is flexibility, but not everyone is comfortable with them. And I miss really those opportunities to have short-term discussions with a colleague about questions just arising in the moment.
And the challenge of access to collections. The Cambridge cataloguers found themselves having to work from digitized images rather than the real manuscripts, much like their Heidelberg colleagues. They were able to continue working, but they didn't have the physical descriptive information, such as about the collation, that the Heidelberg team had. And all the cataloguers working from home missed access to library collections.
Although a lot of secondary literature is available online, many of the key reference sources for working with Greek manuscripts are not available digitally. This inevitably slowed down the catalogers and meant that they couldn't compile a bibliography for each manuscript. So we had more challenges, prioritizing the project, for example. We've both, Suzanne and I, been very lucky as project directors that even in the midst of a pandemic and the impact of that on every aspect of the library services, that our library directors have appreciated the importance of this project and have been very supportive in helping us to do whatever is needed to minimize the impact on the project.
In Cambridge, for instance, project staff were prioritised in plans for return to the building.
So, where are we now? Replanning the project. All project staff are back working on the project, but inevitably the lockdown has impacted on our progress. The project is due to come to an end in March 2021. We have replanned the remaining time and activities and are currently in discussion with the Polonsky Foundation about the steps we can take to complete the project in the best way possible. We have started to publish the digital outputs. We took the decision to publish the manuscripts to our own respective well-established digital libraries. Heidelberg have published all the images and are gradually adding the new descriptions. Cambridge are publishing manuscripts when both images and descriptions are ready. There was certainly an appetite for these digitized primary sources in lockdown. In the first half of 2020, Cambridge had 85,494 page views for the Greek manuscripts it had published, and at Heidelberg we had 444,051 page visits.
In terms of outreach for the project, we had a project newsletter, and we've been publishing regular monthly blog posts as well as using social media, Twitter and Instagram. And we had other plans. We had planned for March 2020 a conservation symposium and workshop, bringing expert conservators from Greece to Cambridge to talk about the conservation of Greek manuscripts. Unfortunately, that had to be cancelled. But we still have other plans for outreach. We're contributing to an exhibition of palimpsests, which is going to open in Cambridge in November, alongside a digital exhibition and a Google Arts and Culture presentation around palimpsest manuscripts. And we're also going to put together a photographic exhibition based on the project. And we managed to maintain monthly blog posts even during the lockdown. And we have further outreach plans to share our material more widely with key audiences, including schools and teachers, and sharing some details about the project in other ways.
Heidelberg initially planned to publish printed catalogues at its own expense to match other collections, but these plans are on hold while we assess the impact of coronavirus. So now the lessons learned. Lesson 1. Plan, but be prepared to be flexible. To anticipate something like the coronavirus pandemic was unthinkable up to spring 2020. It wasn't written into any risk assessment. But the fact that we did have good project plans meant that we have been able to reassess and replan. We've learned a lesson about the impact of unforeseeable incidents, which will help with future project planning.
The second lesson, good project management is essential. Project management is one of those things that's invisible and unsung when everything's going well, but it really shows its worth in difficult situations. Our project manager and project coordinator really helped during the lockdown process. We had frameworks in place to support staff, to measure progress, to replan and assess all our data.
Lesson 3. Recruiting and retaining temporary project staff is a challenge. To staff a project of this kind requires people with very specialist skills. Having worked previously on Latin or vernacular manuscript projects, we were both very aware that the pool of people qualified to catalogue Greek manuscripts is much smaller. Heidelberg was only able to recruit 2 cataloguers at the start of the project. 2 have left over the course of the project, and one of their replacements was only able to commit to working half-time for 9 months. Since May 2020, the Heidelberg cataloguing team has been up to full strength with 3 cataloguers, but we are aware that the risk of staff leaving increases the closer we get to the end of the project.
And our final lesson learned, video meetings are great, but in-person meetings really help to forge strong connections. We feel very lucky that before the lockdown, we had already had several face-to-face meetings of our steering committee, which includes our library directors. And I had been lucky enough to go to Heidelberg with the Cambridge cataloguers for a knowledge exchange visit, which was really beneficial for all of us. This personal contact between Karin and I, and between our library directors, has made it easier to maintain our connections throughout lockdown, and has made a great contribution to the collaborative nature of the project. And on those visits, we've learned so much from each other beyond the specifics of Greek manuscripts.
Collaborating in this project has been a really fabulous opportunity to build knowledge, understanding, and real friendship. Thank you.